the UK and the States, they have been playing for 5-6 years maybe. All of them, boys and just girls. They're playing fighting or shooting games too.
Sorry, we are online. I'm just getting aware, but you can talk. We are waiting for our audience, so continue.
They can hear us?
Yeah, they can hear us. Just in case you want to say something in private, it wouldn't be private anymore. Yeah.
Okay,
I'll share some links. So I'll share some links in other, social networks. You can continue. We are still waiting for our audience.
Okay.
So everything is fine right to this moment. It's really great. I am, surprised in a good way. Yeah. As the autonomous side of technique is becoming more and more surprising the more I am in and out, as in a certain way to connect the reality, to rebuild it from scratch, I'd say. So, in several moments and we'll be ready to start.
It's really funny that we are almost Macedonian and every one of us, but we are still talking English language.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, I don't know. I think that we might understand each other in our respective languages, but still, in the only point, I would understand you better than you would understand me. I have a friend from Russia, and she heard me talking with my daughter, and she says, "Oh, come on, I can understand everything. Why are you pretending to be fancy?" And I said, "Well, okay, read this piece of paper," and she was able to understand every third word, something like that. So we concluded that it was simpler to stick to the English. All the kids, they kind of understand each other. My daughter, when she was small, like 5, she met the grandson of the Russian ambassador. They just spoke to each other and they understood each other. And she was like, he's not from here and he speaks Macedonian.
Yeah, language is complicated. It's something in the outside, really in the outside of any structure. That's the vibe, actually. Yeah, that's a question to cover, I guess, during this event. So, the links are online. They are fine, I suppose. Hello everyone who's already here. Is it good? Ramis? So, well, hello everyone who's here. What can you tell me about the sound, Ramis? What's wrong? Should it be, louder?
Audience right now.
Yeah. Like, look in the comments and answering.
It's not here, but it's on our translation on YouTube.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Uh,
Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can. So, Ramis, is it better? Just write it down. I'll try to fix it. Still we're in a mode of putting the settings.
What's wrong with it?
I don't know, I try to figure it out. Maybe it's too loud or, and the contrary. So, I'm waiting for review on the things I've fixed. One of our our listeners ask you, Katerina, to keep closer to the microphone. Maybe it's the reason the sound is, not very focused.
So you cannot hear me well. The microphone is in the computer.
Maybe it would be better.
Can you hear me now? Well? Maybe I should put some earphones.
Maybe it would be an improvement. Anyway, we're waiting for another question. So. Okay, yeah, for sharing. It's alright. Yeah. The very first fear I face here is to sound like a Russian reader who has really no skills, as my Russian style, is pretty abstract, and to say it the same in English is even more complicated. And the second fear is to, appear to sound like a Russian mafia, like, what the hell are you talking about? In the very core. I guess I will fight all my fears during our material here.
Russian mafia in the Hollywood movie.
Yeah. That's it. A very respectful social group, I'd say. Even too respectful for being mentioned.
It's unbelievable how misrepresented is the culture and everything in those movies. We're just aliens to them. We all are. I don't know if you have noticed that Praga Sherbedia, he still identifies as Yugoslav, by the way, a Yugoslav actor. He plays all the Russian mafia guys in the Hollywood movies, or most of them, in the past 20 decades. Yes, 2 decades, really. Not so much recently, but until maybe 10 years ago, he was always the Russian mafia. Although he's created he identifies as Yugoslav.
Yeah, that's interesting.
We're all the same to them.
Yeah, that's it. That's true. A mixture that forms a certain ability from the outside. Like, we do not have any inner criteria to be differentiated, but it's wrong. It's totally wrong. It's interesting to cover. So, I guess the sound has improved, so we can start maybe. Yes, a bit better, as I see in chat, but it would be easier to hear, to follow, if we all be, a bit closer to our microphones. So, yeah, I guess it's great. I feel the improvement, I hear it, actually. So, hello everyone, you're being here on the Contrculture Philosophy channel. And here we are. I am the front person of this organization, and it's cringe maker, Chiron Theorist, and I'm being Chiron Theorist, but not Chiron Theoretic for the first time, and it's really I feel hesitation because of the mixed up manners I feel and face. And here we are having Katerina Kolozova here and Lika Kareva for discussing a really intriguing and gripping topic that is about the rigid way to talk about subjectivity, how we can produce it, through praxis and through practice that has no borders. So, I guess we'll last for 2 hours as we always do. The first hour will be dedicated fully to our discussion. That would be a sort of independent material we can produce and confront from ourselves. That's the thing I want to put stress on. And the very first question you're free, dear audience, to write your questions in the comments. Leave your comments below. I guess it could be sound like this, to be correct. And we'll try to answer it in 1 hour. So the very first question is, I guess, for us to become engaged into the topic, into the discussion actually, is what's subjectivity and what borders do we confront when we are stating it? As it's a very controversial point, where the subjectivity really lies and on what aspects of our existence it relies on. And I guess lots of points can be expanded due to this criteria, due to this starting point. And I have some, hypothesis to mention, but I'll elaborate on it later. And I guess Lika has a lot to mention and some topic to cover. So, especially connected with the connection to feminist philosophy. So, Lika, the word is yours, and the world is yours as well, so you can start, and then we'll be ready to kind of be in a flowing mood.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to start. I will not start, but try to start, because I'm quite having really devastating experience right now. I think it's the first time me and Chiron are talking in English too, and I can say that it's very easier now to understand Chiron, actually.
I hope not.
Okay. I'll try to elaborate on that question of subjectivity and say about its specifics in feminist philosophy, of which I know until that time. I think that I can say about my experience maybe of participating in various seminars on feminist philosophy, and my experience of trying to elaborate on that very subject, what is the subject in that philosophy. And there always I tried to do that through using some theoretical models that pass to us some characteristics of female subject, usually. And those characteristics, that set of characteristics, usually was given to us through the theory, not just by itself, but as an opposition to a set of characteristics of not female subjects, which is main subjects or general, total, and so on. Yes, about that, Katerina, of course, has written a lot in her book Cut of the Real. Yes, and that was that made that situation very clear for me. But what I wanted to say there is that not your thesis I wanted to say right now, but I wanted to say the other things about subjectivity in that talks in feminist philosophy. The thing is about where that subjectivity is relating to the real subject, some real female subject, because it is quite, it is not hard to assume that
that it is the same very thing that when I talk, when I'm describing the female subject from the theory of Lika Kareva, for example, I say that that subject is like water, is fluid subject. It is diffused, dispersed, like water in that relation, and so on. I can say give many characteristics, but at the same time, yes, I can say something something about man subject. Say that it is rigid, it is organized, it is not fluid because it is very stable, and so on and so on. But the first set and the second set of characteristics, they are in reality they are given to us on a certain level of abstraction, I think, and that is not very clear not very clear immediately, because it is, as I said, not hard to assume that when I talk about the female subject, I talk about actual female. So yes, the question is, when we are talking about female subjectivity, for example, when we are talking, using the model of Lika Kareva, on what level of abstraction are we relating to the real?
Okay, so many questions here. First of all, I think that I do argue that to a certain extent, actually a considerable extent in the cut of the real, but I think that I've elaborated it more closely in my latest books that is published with Bloomsbury Academic. I opened in the cut of the real further expounded on that question, and I think I kind of arrived to a new, not new level in the sense of ascendance, like, I am some sort of superiority of knowledge, but simply I have discovered a new aspect, a new facet of that question, or of the problem I'm posing. I have been posing since the cut of the real. And the problem is the following. Is it problematic, actually, to equate the notions of selfhood, of what used to be called prior to the 19th, 18th century, the self, the I. There are different terms, we know, since Greek antiquity until modernity. So there used to be different words, philosophical words for this reality. Nowadays, this reality in contemporary philosophy, especially after the linguistic turn, nowadays this reality is called subjectivity, exclusively subjectivity. So when we talk of the self, we feel obliged to talk of the subject, to frame our reasoning in the structural logic of subjectivity, of the subject and subjectivity. Perhaps we can come up with a different vocabulary, or perhaps we can reconsider our repository of concepts and recreate our language when we talk of this reality, in the sense that would elude and probably create different possibilities of conceptualization and naming, elude the centrality of the notion of the subject and subjectivity. So maybe, I know that this sounds very abstract at this point, but consider the following. Consider that, as I said earlier, prior to modernity, prior to a certain, a very specific period in the history of philosophy, there were different terms at our disposal, not necessarily subject. Nowadays, you've got the notion that Francois Leroy operates with, which is the human in human, for example. So, so the human in human, radical subjectivity, stranger, all of these notions amount to the complexity that he seeks to account for without reducing it to the notion of the subject. What I would propose here takes a slightly different route. It does not coincide perfectly with Leroy's proposal, although it resonates at many points. What I would propose, and I have elaborated this more closely in the latest books, the book is to take the route of Marx's critique of the centrality of the notion of subjectivity. Its centrality, its role as the organizing principle of thought in philosophy. Actually, according to Marx, if you remember that chapter from the early writings that's called the critique of Hegel's philosophy in general, or the writings on Feuerbach. If you think of them, you might remember that he problematizes Feuerbach's materialism because it's still philosophical. He argues that remaining inside of philosophy keeps you inside of idealism. So you will never reach proper materialism because you're inside of the logic of philosophy. And then, so philosophy equals idealism. That's basically, a simplified rendition of what he says there. So if Marx is correct in this sense, and if we want to abandon idealism, reach proper materialism, also enter a form of science of the species being of humanity, as he calls it, we need to live, of course, idealism. In order to live idealism, we have to live philosophy, abandon philosophy. And in order to abandon philosophy, what do we need to abandon? The centrality of the notion of subjectivity. That's what Marx argues. So subjectivity as the organizing principle of thought is something inherent in philosophy, in all philosophy, according to him. So if that is okay, let me just illustrate what he's talking about. For example, he's kind of mocking, I would say, Hegel's concept of the spirit by saying that it's the universal egoist projected onto the outside world, onto the outsideness, onto the universe. The universe, the reality itself, is the product of this mirage, of this projection of this grandiose megalomaniac, as he calls it, universal egoist. So he sees a problem in this. He sees a problem in, it is an ontological problem, but it is also an epistemological problem. He thinks that because subjectivity, humans, any subjectivity would be human subjectivity. He says, well, kind of explicitly, but if we add Wells reading on Marx, we would come to the realization, and even Marx himself suffices because he is rather clear about this. Subjectivity as the organizing principle of thought and the fundament of ontology cannot be any other subjectivity but the human subjectivity. So as long as our reasoning is ruled by the structure, the inner rules, the inner logic of subjectivity, of human subjectivity, as long as that happens, thought, even when thinking a completely different thought of reality, or even when supposedly exiting humanism in the form of post-humanism, for example. So when thought attempts to do that, it is still stuck into something inherently human and anthropocentric. Because this subjectivity cannot be any other kind of subjectivity but human subjectivity. So subjectivity-centered thought has never abandoned anthropocentrism in thought. And if we're still, no matter how futuristic, no matter how techno-oriented, accelerationism fixated we are as post-humanists, if the organizing logic of the way we think about our selfhood, about the outside reality, if this organizing principle is subjectivity, it is still human subjectivity, and we're still stuck in this atavistic type of thought we haven't abandoned since Parmenides until nowadays. So this is what I think we must arrive at, problematize the centrality and kind of it being the legislating principle of all thought, the centrality of subjectivity. So everything must be subjectivized. We always ask how a certain policy or whatever would be subjectivized or rendered a kind of a subject. We are fixated on what kind of subjects we can fathom. For example, when we talk about AI, artificial reality, we are again fixated on those possible future subjects, as if produced in some sort of a mimicry of the human subject. Even when we say, no, it's not going to be human, it's going to be something radically different, structurally, it remains a mimesis of humanity, because it is, it would be the product of this subjectivity-centered thought. How about a complete disembodiment? How about not delusion necessarily, but okay, let's imagine a delusion, entity of completely territorialized selfhood or whatever. We are somehow still unable to grasp it unless we surpass this logic of subjectivity, of necessary subjectivization, of that being the center of everything that we consider relevant. For example, concerning the issues you open. So I'm finally arriving at the issue of gender. Again, why would we be talking about necessarily about subjects, female, male subjects, when we talk about the asymmetries of gender? Why don't we talk about structures, socioeconomic structures? Why don't we talk about collectivities? There are different ways to account of these things than merely be fixated on the subject. And of course, what follows inevitably identity and identity politics thereof. I know it's a kind of a difficult bubble to burst. This identity-centered thought about genders. I know that that one might be accused of, economic or class reductionism or whatever. But what I would propose is something that would go beyond the logic of identity itself, because it would go beyond the logic of subjectivity-centered thought. So class reductionism would not work as an objection to what I'm proposing, because the critique about class reductionism is again a critique about a certain form of identity being privileged. Again, for example, when you talk about class and how relevant it is, and that maybe we can look at the issue of gender in terms of class, you're immediately accused of economic reductivism or reductionism. First of all, it might be a reductionism if you look at class as an identity issue. If you look at class as a more robust, structural, call it even formal notion, it's a completely different picture. Then I also don't think that class is reducible to economy. And I don't think that economy is reducible to economy either. Economy is a more complex thing. Economy, or talking about class and introducing economy into this conversation does not necessarily have to be an economic conversation. It can be a materialist conversation about certain societal realities that are far from being reducible merely to poverty or the lack of it, or money, or economy in that sense of the word. Political economy, understood properly in the Marxist sense of the word, is something more complex. It's a sort of a metaphysics, and it entails, many layers of reality that can be accounted for in material terms. Sometimes, or at least in Marx's example, sometimes the reduction to the tangible reality of economic production is useful in terms of grounding the discussion in terms of materiality or materialism, let's say so. But I don't think that either according to Marx or according to close reading of Marx nowadays in the 21st century, and especially if aided with philosophy, non-philosophy, I don't think that his analysis of capital is reducible to economy. Certainly not to possession, money, salary, this sort of simplifications that seem to float around the notion of class when one discusses class nowadays, and especially when one accuses of class reductionism. I think that Marxist capital is a far more complex thing and offers an account of, an entire creation of a human universe that goes beyond mere economy. So, my answer, it was really long, I know, but my answer is that maybe let's move away from this fixation on subjectivity, maybe invent a new language that would account of this gendered realities that would be placed beyond the centrality of the notion of subjectivity, and by way of that go beyond identity politics and reduction of these issues to identity, because I do believe that the post-structuralist identity politics is simply a product of this fallacy of a methodological problem, the problem of the fallacy of reification, the subject being reified, fetishized as an identity, gendered identity. Also, there are other fetishes, other forms of identity that are popular to discuss nowadays. Okay, it was really long, I'm sorry.
It was great. It was great, thanks a lot. Chiron, can I proceed with fixation a little bit?
Yeah, I guess you can.
With fixation.
Daniel, give the word to me. I'll elaborate on some topics that are forbidden for now. What's that? Is it fine?
She wants to proceed with this fixation on the subjectivity issue.
Do you hear me now? Can you hear me?
We cannot hear her.
Yes, I think Chiron hears
moments.
us, but we don't hear her.
Okay, several moments.
Use the chat room. Okay, I'll just proceed. Yes, with that topic. With that, yes, Katerina, it's my initial desire to skip that topic and to proceed to some other topics. That's why I actually I am no longer I'm an ex cyber feminist. I do tell it to Chiron, yes, because it is very hard. It's a very hard topic.
It's fine, yeah? Okay, yeah, so continue, then I'll elaborate on some other topics that are being, forbidden in my own intentions. So yeah, continue, please.
It's a very hard topic, indeed, and I see it as a kind of topic that is not hard to discuss through using metaphors, but when we are arriving at some analysis, some very subtle analysis, the topic is hard to grasp, really. But let me say just one variant that I arrived at about what can be the structural, the analytical genealogy of subjectivity. Actually, I talked when me and Karen talked, had a session last time. I was fascinated by two subjects which were not connected, so I just simultaneously talked about them. One was the Cut of the Real book, your book, and the second was Toy Philosophy of Reza Negarestani and some analytic philosophers like Wilfrid Sellers on the other side of philosophy, let's say. Yes, so I talked about them simultaneously, and I thought maybe that toy philosophy or analytic method would be appropriate to subjectivity too. That's how the toy philosophy model by Reza Negarestani, or just some other models that modulate theory as such, are saying always that theory and philosophy which we are using is not, of course, the reality, but it's a model which is structured in a very clear and specified way. So the model is always some kind of structure which in a way is similar to some real structure which is the target of that model, but it is not that initial real structure, and that model is the thing which we are using as philosophers. We are working with the model, not with real structures. And within that models which we operate from, there can sometimes возникнуть.
Appear.
Emerge.
Emerge.
Within that models which we are operating from, sometimes there can emerge the thing which is called theoretical object. The theoretical object is not real, it is fictional. Yes, it is fictional because it can emerge only in models, but theoretical objects can tell something about the real objects, how they operate. It is they are always emerging through subjunctive conditional, through fiction, which says that what if it was so and so? What if? Yes, so I think, the very coolest thing about models is that models always highlight some of the properties of the target structure, which are not so very clear, which we don't see very clear in the real structure. But the model can highlight them and make sure that we'll see how only they operate example, it may be some kind of visual calculus of how a diagram, how bullets may fly, if it will less and from yes, we can make a diagram, and there we will see only trajectory. Trajectory property will be important to us. The other things won't be necessary to see. Yeah. So it's very cool that model can highlight some properties which would be important for our analysis. And maybe I thought that maybe that whole topic is a way to look at subjectivity differently. To present, which would mean that we would present subjectivity as a model of some real structured self, but not the self, and it would also be right to say that this when she's, or some other post-structuralist feminist philosopher, when they are giving the subject model as a model which contains some properties, such properties, and not the other, it would be right to say that, and it would be fine, because the subject that operates through that properties can make for us clear how some function operates in a certain structure, like Paul Petter really works as a machinic structure, which to see some special properties in so-called humans and exploit certain properties. That's my take about the connection between analytic and transcendental methods. Okay, to that point, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I really do, but if it would be more convenient, if it's more convenient to answer now, you can do it, and then I'll add some positions I wanted to mention previously, so you can start.
Okay, I'll respond then to this comment. Yes, this is very interesting. I can see that we're talking about similar things. But now, about analytic continental philosophy, etc., I really do not believe in this divide. I really do not. Continental philosophy is not, that's an Anglo-Saxon perception that, the continentals do not study this type of philosophy that they call analytic, but, they actually do. They just have a different name for it, philosophical logic, philosophy of language, or whatever. All of these analytics, I've studied them locally as, under these rubrics. So it's simply a different canon, a different form of canonization. I don't think that there is in the very history of ideas that of course isn't reducible to post-World War II. I don't see this tension between the two traditions. After all, the divide was, Reva, for example, or yourself in this discussion, or Ray Mercier, in his use of sellers, there's always this presupposition that we must resort to analytic philosophy in order to be able to account of the real. If we don't do that, well, we are trapped in the post-structuralist, postmodernist, like, all is signification, real is inaccessible, and give up. And a postmodernist, a follower to the Butler, all of the constructivists, there is no way out. I don't think that that's the only way out. I know that many of us want out of this, but I don't think that resorting to the authoritative analytic philosophy is the only way out. I do think that, first of all, Marx has provided the possibilities of something like that. Then somebody who precedes the divide, Wittgenstein, has provided, when the concept of the master has provided the possibility for something like that. Of course, he is one of the creators of the notion of this analytic use of philosophy, etc. But when I said precedes, I mean this the institution of this kind of divide between traditions. So in that sense, it precedes it. And I think that François Leroux, that's why he's so important to me. And I find it peculiar that Ray has somehow decided to abandon or just keep a very little of Leroux in this work and move to sellers and the analytics in order to move forward with his argument in the book. I think that Leroux offers a sufficiently powerful means to arrive at the goal which I'm assuming we all admitted we want to arrive at. We want out of this vicious circle of post-structuralism and constructivism. I guess that's the agreement here. We want out, but we also do not contest the post-structuralist and structuralist claim that the real is foreclosed. We're aware of that. But we still think that we should be able to account of it. So that's what the speculative turn is all about. And I find it, as I said, problematic. I don't find it problematic. To me, it's insufficient to resort to analytic philosophy in order to break out of the circle. First of all, Master's critique itself of correlationism is sufficient grounds enough to break away from this enchantment, this vicious circle. Second, I really do find non-philosophy or non-standard philosophy, Leroux's proposal that many have built on since the first decade of the 21st century. I find that proposal very efficient in achieving what you were aiming at, I'm assuming, through this discussion. Why do we resort to analytic philosophy? Why do we need the concept of the models in order to justify our ambition to account of the real, to create a discourse of the real while admitting its foreclosure? Why do we need those things? There are other solutions, as I said, proposed by others, which I find, we can use them, but I find other means more efficient. And no, actually, it's right to to ask the question, why do we need those? And why do we think that, the continental tradition is, incorrigible in this respect? The continental tradition, while remaining in a certain position where it does not proclaim the ambition to subject itself to the service of science, or to be some sort of auxiliary discipline orbiting around sciences, which is how I see analytic philosophy basically. It might be a simplification, oversimplification, I know it is, but I'm doing it for the sake of the conversation. So instead of doing that, instead of doing this mimicry, why not face the problem of not only continental philosophy, but all philosophy, as Roland proposes. And Marx makes a similar proposal. Roland's proposal is very simple. He says, remain, actually, we'll come back to later on, and let's just remind ourselves of Marx and his proposal to exit philosophy, his proposal to exit the circularity, self-circumscription of philosophy, his proposal for philosophers to account of the real, to submit to the real, rather than remain in this narcissistic self-meddling. So ever since we have been wondering, how do we do that? How do we speak of the real from the position of the real? Then the post-structuralists concluded that it's impossible, it's foreclosed forever, it's impenetrable, it's over. Okay, that's Marx's proposal, and that's the dilemma he created. I believe that he created answers to the dilemma he posed, but we kind of overlooked that by re-philosophizing Marx. But let's go to Orwell and what he proposes. He says, and often he has been critiqued for his reductionism of philosophy to a single thing. Reductionism or generalization, either of them actually. I wouldn't say that what he does is that. He's simply radicalizing the question, or makes use of what he himself calls, but also Althusser calls, arriving at the identity of the last instance or problem. According to him, the identity of the last instance, or in the last instance of all philosophy, it's more scientific, like the models from analytic philosophy, or other things from analytic philosophy, tools from analytic philosophy, why not accept Lowell's proposal, which is very simple? He says, merely change your posture of thought. The posture of thought that is scientific admits the foreclosure of the real, in a way. So, it admits what you just talked about, that it does the work of a certain fiction. It produces a fiction, like, this tragic time. It's a fiction, right? It's a creation, it's no different from art, right? That's what Lowell calls fiction, by the way. He also talks about fiction. Fiction. So, you produce this fiction, this trajectory, but it does account of the real. It talks of the real. So, in a way, science kind of implicitly, without being obsessing with the question of what the real itself is, science actually admits the radical foreclosure of the real, of the outsideness, of the outside reality it examines. It does not even have the ambition to grasp what it is in and of itself. This foreclosure is admitted, yet it invents means to mediate its effects. Creates this fiction, as you said. I agree with that completely. So, I think that what we can do, and that's where I think the combination of Marx and Lowell is very useful, is accept Marx's proposal to exit philosophy, but also agree with Lowell that we cannot simply just run away from it, just leave it, and I don't know, by way of simple mimicry, create completely new science of humanity, but rather remain within philosophy, but with a different posture of thought. So doing philosophy, operating with philosophical material with a different posture of thought. That which is similar to the scientific posture of thought, and that which is divorced from this ambition to marry thought and the real. So here comes in Lika Kareva, who's very important in my own work as well, and I agree with you. I mean, that's actually what I discuss in the latest book. Her work is present throughout the book, but one chapter in particular is dedicated to this reading of Lika Kareva via Marx. I mean, she actually proposes that herself. So reading patriarchy as this automaton, but make this structural similarity with the workings of value creation of capital, of the automaton of capital, and the automaton of patriarchal value production, and make this link more explicit. And she offers this possibility of merely extracting it and formalizing it further. But you're right, we can talk about women, we can be feminists. I think we must be feminists, because there is a power asymmetry. We don't have to be feminists on the subjectivity level, or feminists because there is power as asymmetry, and there is, in fact, class difference between the two genders, sexes and genders, both. Because when you talk about femininity as not femininity, actually, femininity is gender of women. When I talk of women as, in materialist terms, as a political reality, that does not exclude trans women, for example, because materialist discussion is not reducible to biology, but rather to historical materialist, it's not reducible to that either, but it comes down to that methodology grounded in that logic of historical materialism, let's say. Physical reality is also relevant, but if we, gender this discussion, then we can also be inclusive of trans women. I mean, that's the whole problem. We prevent each other from having a proper feminist conversation because of the boundaries created by identity politics. Based on constructivist methodology. What do I mean by this? The constructivist dogma says abandon the body. It's irrelevant. If we stick to the body or admit its reality or relevance, then we're exclusive of trust. We don't have, that is so if you think in terms of identity politics. If you think in structural terms, you can imagine also the bodily reality of femininity, which includes cis women and trans women as well, because their bodily reality is also relevant. They undergo processes, physical processes that play a role in their femininity. Why preclude conversation about physical reality? That can work only if we move away from identity politics. If we stay inside the episteme of identity politics, then we would be trans-exclusionary. And that is something we do not wish to be. So, in order to be a materialist, in order to be a Marxist, but still inclusive of this women as well, we must abandon subjectivity-centered and identity politics-centered logic. And as you said, Kirilla's proposal model, let's call it the model, is a great start for them. Sorry, I'm so expensive.
No, it's great. No, it's great, actually. People are, writing in chat, texting in chat that your sound is getting worse. Could you please be a bit closer to your, gadget? I don't know how to influence this. Yeah, maybe it would be better if you keep it close.
It's close, but it may not be, very good. I can use the computer mic.
Yeah, I guess they can. I'm just trying to control the things that are automatically hidden from us. Therefore, I'm trying to connect the material as I hear you really great. The sound is alright actually, but people are writing something, contrary, and therefore I'm a bit nervous. But it's alright now, I guess. Yeah, maybe. That's the question to elaborate on, I guess. Very extensive, and it's all of the stuff mentioned by Lika and you is really, conceptually lovely, and it, I guess, expands on other plots of whether we are engaged into different topics we're talking about, actually, or whether we are the topics. I guess it's important to mention in my further speech. I want to construct, in several moments. There were several, I'd say, points to mention, some material to cover. I'll try to, extract the best merits from the demerits of mine. As for the subjectivity itself, my approach really, sticks to all the stuff you've mentioned. I mean, the overall direction we are talking about. That's being inhuman and descended actually. That we are not concentrated in one center for being here, for being present. But then I was really thinking on alternatives within this structure for being relevant in our further distinction from it. I guess it's important for getting the essence, the very essence inside the core we've gotten. And that's controversial, but still very gripping, intriguing, and edgy thing that constructs the way we interact within something given. So the point and the hypothesis, I guess, whether subjectivity exists, but it's a layer, like it's not ours, it isn't even something that can be a human, but it's a structure that is invented from the outside, like we're being combinations of actions, of acts, actually, that are constructed by inner tense and density of manner, the way we do something, the way we approach things. And therefore, to this extent, I guess, no matter, so it doesn't matter. To this extent, we really see that the real concept of action signals a shift. So action is a cohesion we get from the nowhere because of being able to proceed various approaches, various forms of stylistical modes, and some, nowadays tendencies really stick to that. Like, I really like to name it TikTok. Like, there is no content you produce, actually, or the majority of content there isn't a production. It's the way you see you're present within the formed version of existence. And that's really fascinating. So we can take, I guess we can add a note to all the things mentioned and with which I agree, that subjectivity is a certain layer that extracts us the opportunities for being demolished from the outside, not from outside, no, that's a bad choice, word choice, from the tensed, not objectivity, no, from tensed given, the given as a very old, the very core term of something we confront. So maybe our personalized point that led to such an abstract that is actually a lie, as subjectivity, should be forbidden, should be hidden again, and especially it is a resource to form our return, our big massive return to certain acts we collide within themselves for answering the given. Therefore, I'm confronting the analytical traditions, besides the fact that I'm a bit, in the topic. So I did some linguistic stuff, like philosophy of language. But my main problem is essence, and it's really important to, I'd say, rebuke subjectivity as a term that comes from outside for making us allowed being present for all the time. But the real agency we produce, is always, I'd say, spreaded. And this spreaded notion makes us wondering, where do we are? And maybe we are the present, and when we are ruining some links between confrontations, we are able to face and to encounter the real itself, actually, and the real as a combination of processes that constructs our strategies. And here is the question: if we accept all of the things mentioned, like maybe the main point and the main demerit of, let's say, of speech in general, speech we produce from ourselves and which we consume, besides the real acts we, I'd say, we state, is that our way of vision is considered to be given. So we are not thinking ourselves as the very first point of overall action, but it's very hard, even in a Parmenides way, this around the academy. I really hate it. I've always hated it. Like, what are you talking about? It can be really different. There are rivals, man. Just stop it. No. It's and it was the very start of philosophy. Wow, that's where it all ended. I guess it really ended there. So we should restart the start, I'd say. So back to the topic. Not to be too abstract or even more abstract, whatever. So maybe the main point to mention is how we can refuse seeing our vision as something that can be, a structure from the outside. So we can review the way we connect things. So that's all about bonds that refuse actual concrete points from where we start. And also, to get rid of the consequences as a material that's relatively connected and necessarily connected with the very start. So maybe we should pay attention to the distance, I guess, in where we are, for getting rid of subjectivity, but for maintaining the approach that reforms the very basic presentational way, the way we present things. What do you think on it? I guess it's a huge topic to elaborate on, actually, and I'm being, really, I'm floating in it, and even more the more I talk on it, the more I'm being in it. Yeah, sort of question. All of you, actually.
Who wants first? Lika?
I don't think that I have an answer to this, but I have just another take on my previous thing about models again. Yeah, so I don't know what we should do first.
As you wish. Maybe Katerina will start, and then Lika will produce your take. And then I guess get to some comments. Sorry for interrupting. Sometimes there is not a very good synchrony between us. Therefore, I do not hear the voice. So then I guess we can turn to chat to read some questions from it and answer to it. Yeah. So yeah, please.
Well, yeah, I agree with all you said. I mean, I agree. I share a similar position. I see and I operate with the notion of subject in a way that affirms its exteriority, as you put it, vis-a-vis a certain aspect of humanity. is something that is exterior vis-a-vis the rest of our composition. Let's put it that way. I call this composition the radical diet, and I borrow this term from Fossil and the radical diet. I add to it a little bit of Donna Haraway's notion of the cyborg. Then I apply to this notion of the cyborg Orwell's method of the so-called dualisis or unilateralization, which produces a notion of a diet that remains a diet. That's why he calls it a radical diet. The two things are always two. They are together, they constitute this duality, let's put it that way, or a diet, but this diet does not seek to kind of overcome the duality, either through, I don't know, some sort of dialectical or other form of unification or sublation, more through the post-modernist, post-structuralist definition of the paradox, the split, or whatever. We're not even affirming the paradox. There is no paradox because there is no expectation of unification. Well, this kind of diet that does not expect to be unified ever is kind of a structure of thinking that can be applied on the notion of humanity or conceived in Orwellian terms, we would call it non-humanity. So humanity without the concept of philosophical sufficiency, without the foundation, the philosophical foundation of the notion of humanity, without the principle of philosophical sufficiency, which comes down to the anthropology we talked about at the beginning. So if we call humanity non-humanity, we don't have to agree to call it that way. Simply, let's call it humanity. This, if we look at it, especially on the level of the individual unit, if we look at it in terms of the radical diet, that, as I said, is conceived by the help of Haraway's notion of the cyber, we can affirm the diet of physicality, material reality, but also very real, which does not necessarily have to be physicality or physical, because the symbolic can have the effect and the status of the real as well. Language produces the effects of the real as well. Actually, to me, the real is not substance or essence in Aristotelian terminology. It would be more like purpose, mode. So, on the one hand, we have this thing, and on the other hand, what do we have? We have language, right? That's where the subject is placed. Language is the place of the subject. This is kind of a consensus among the post-structuralists, for example. And I will agree with them, because it's also the consensus of structuralist linguistics, and I concur with this thesis. So, the subject is where the language lies. If the language is the automaton, the signifying automaton, Lacan spoke of, Saussure spoke of, and the subject is merely its effect, a kind of an artifice, right? Because the language is an artifice, it's a creation, is a tool of mediation. We have the artifice at the heart of the human in human, as Laurel would put it. We have this artifice where the subject stands, and the real, that the real we are. It can be materiality, it can be physicality, it can be seen as kind of a phenomenology, it can be seen as the real in Zonareko's sense, the real of the real abstraction. It can be seen as the real of which Alenka Zhukoncic writes, so all of these aspects. So I'm not reducing it to biology. So we have this real and physicality next to it, and the language, the automaton of signification, language, and the subject there. And this dyad is never unified into, it's never, we don't expect any unification. It's a radical dyad. And I think that this is actually what Marx meant talked about when he spoke of his primary alienation, that kind of that capitalism through fetishization seeks to obfuscate, to hide this. That's why I call identity and gendering identity or identitary gendering of subject reification. It's the same procedure, we are kind of embarrassed to admit the pure and empty form of subjectivity, of subjecthood. It's founding alienation, or as you put it, it's, inevitable exteriority, kind of exteriority, and we fill it up with content that make it merely seem material, even though to be a subject is a purely formal. What makes it real, what makes it lived and livable and relatable is actually not identity, not a content that should fill the empty form of the subject, but something that is more, as you put it, on this level of flow, level of intersecting exteriorities, of planes, instead of intersecting or touching or parallel planes of reality, instead of kind of shoving it all up into the form of the subject, then translated into the notion of identity, gendered or otherwise.
Mm-hmm. One moment. I'll answer to. Thank you very much for expanded and spread it out. Let's say answer that covered lots of plots inside it and reformed the very core of inner sense. And therefore, it's a productive talk. It's not a talk anymore. It's something that that's produced after the talk. That's the thing I really respect and pay close attention to. So that's a great pleasure to hear. Lika, would you mind if I answer to material mentioned? I'll try to keep myself simple and brief. At least I'll try to keep myself brief, and as simple as I can. Then it would be your word taken, and then I guess we can look over comments. So please, our dear audience, our dear viewers, leave them below again, maybe, if they are, still important or relevant. Or maybe we have, during our discussion, have already answered them, to them, actually, yeah. So, I hate in Russian, English, in Russian, don't like them. Some reduction of the very core flow of the very progressed
you operate very well with them.
Thank you. Maybe they, sort of, they refuse me before I confront them. Standard model of myself, of mine. As for the stuff you've mentioned, all the aspects, it's the true magic that's, well, I'll try to make it clear and, enough without all the lurid detail. Anyway, that's really interesting how we get another source if we take into account the way a function produces itself. So, as you mentioned, that there is a certain principle that lies under the subjectivity. It's a human-centered notion, but it's never like that, and therefore we have certain ways to produce things. And as I'm, said, mainly interested in a problem of agency and of actions, how we do essence, I'd say, and how we interact with it and how we become the essence. I'd say, in addition to stuff you've mentioned, that I find that maybe we are being, constantly hiding ourselves from, I'd say, from not structures, but from inevitable modules of representation. So we are being selected from our own actions, and before we can fulfill the function. Like subjectivity was firstly stated and postulated in case to serve a certain function, definitely. It's to make our life less wide, maybe, and more concentrated. But the very function of it really has lost because of the stating that we've gotten after talking about subjectivity at the major center point of all these courses we are in currently. And I guess it's really crucial to exaggerate, sort of, or just, if I put it as a slight exaggeration, to extract the point of a function from the subjectivity, that we can serve our own needs by ourselves. Like, we do not construct something from the scratch, but we use the material given for becoming the constructions. That's, the linear, so we demolish the linear perspective of action, but we become the source that leaves us no choice of rather than being the real itself. So that's the process of talking to formed structures in order to find the distance that reforms the very beginning. So we really can and should do, I even not say must, reform the very beginning for facing the real and for endeavoring the core of it. Endeavoring as we are, being in a constant desire for formulating something with no real attempt to it. But we should become the attempt to reform the way we present the basic ability to renew results and to postulate it in sort of an absolute that's not given, but it's found from the scratch. That's, if we are talking about in Alenka Zupancic, especially her work on sex and subjectivity, great work, I really love it. It's, I guess, a good way to state personalized ontology at the very start that ruins the need to be resultative. As, for example, I always face different hate about my speech, especially in Russian. What are you talking about? It's schizophrenia, and so on and so forth. But so the new meaning is a standardized matter. So I face it every time. So there is no way for some people actually to face the ability to reach the new. So they have a standardized matter within the subjectivity. And that's a problem. That's a problem that blocks our own actions within a certain matter we can present, and present just by being in existence, being concentrated in it. Yeah, that sort of stuff I wanted to add. Yeah, if you have some comments, I will be really eager to hear your answer, and then Lika, it would be your turn, and then comments. I remember about everything, guys. I'm talking to our viewers, dear viewers. We'll come back to you in some moments, so stay tuned. Yeah.
Let's leave some time for the comments. I'll just give the floor to Lika, and we're kind of agreeing on many things. So
yeah, that's it.
Let's hear Lika and the others. Yeah.
So I wanted to agree to make a grounding for agreement, maybe too. Between those various discourses which we are operating through, and the ground for agreement may be the place where our material, our philosophical and existential material lives in. It is the language. In language structures, we can find something and use it as a material, really. And that is the same, that is true as for psychoanalysis, as for post-structuralism, and as for such thinkers as Wilfrid Sellars and Robert Brandon too. It was really that thing that I was trying to mention. Maybe not analytic and continental traditions would be the best words to make the distinction, but maybe we can make the distinction through words description and analysis. Analysis would be the thing which we are both using. That method which sees structures in language, really, or some real abstractions, like in Marxism, and yeah, we are relating to them we are relating to them via some sort of distance. We don't think that those abstractions should dictate our own form, as it may happen in the thing that I call a descriptionist way of relating, descriptionist philosophy, and naive subjects. That's how I see the picture. Basically, that's some kind of great description of self or of a human which philosophy presents, and there is a masochistic or some kind of other disturbed self which sees the description as a manual for individual becoming. That, of course, is not a situation which is comforting to a philosopher or to an ordinary human. I think that's where L'Oreal, with his thinking about ordinary man and ordinary human, comes in the same line as some analytic philosophers which I mentioned, I think.
sounds assertive, I'd say, really. Like all of you do, really. Random simp moment, I'm very happy to be here and so on, really, love you, my dear colleagues and interlocutors. So I'll come to questions, yeah, from the chat for covering them. Dear viewers, can you repeat the first questions before you called me in chat Pyro the Theorist? Yeah, the Theorist. It would be really helpful. Thank you. As YouTube sometimes cancel the chat material. For me especially, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, strange, weird, and still it is what it is. So, one of the questions that has left here and is not cancelled by the system, by the autonomy we were talking about. What are the most efficient tools to overcome subjectivity? How is it possible to implement them for feminism? Great one.
Best tools.
Yeah. Minecraft philosophy. Like, yeah. Yeah, Katerina.
Mute myself. We do not need to overcome subjectivity because subjectivity is a form of reality. We should study, we should offer account for, but there is a way of treating subjectivity which is not subjectivity centered. So the proposal here is to overcome subjectivity-centered thought, reasoning, philosophy as a form. Which is always already subjectively centered. One way of doing that, which is proposed by Marx himself, is treating subjectivity, actually treating every reality. So subjectivity, human subjectivity as a form of reality, as an object among objects. Now, this is not the same like object-oriented ontology, which is grounded in a completely different tradition. It's a strange perversion of the subject into the object into subject. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear me. I have a sense that something's wrong with the sound. Instead of that, we would apply what Marx calls the third party's perspective. So it's neither sub specia aeternitatis perspective, the God's perspective, or human perspective. Simply imagine the third party's position in your perspective. In that way, we are transcending the problem of human-centered thought, and we're still capable of thinking about humanity, but in a way that Marx called objective way, and that objectivism is obviously not the same as Kant's or the positivist objectivism. Through this description of the third party perspective I just gave, I'm assuming it's evident that it's a different notion of objectivity, not the positivist one.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great one. So, then
something is wrong with my sorry.
It's okay with the sound. It actually got.
The sound is okay, but I can. Anyway, I'll manage. I'm new here, so.
So, well, the next one. But also, it would be interesting if you define the difference between subject and agent, because they often been confused by Russian speakers. Well, personally, I, differentiate them consciously, but it would be interesting to hear what do you think on it and about it.
Do you have the same problem in your country, in your language?
Yes, I really strongly differentiate them, but do you have...
Agency and subject. Agency and subject, yes, we have a problem to, first of all, translate agency. Some of us translated as действенность, действительность. I don't know if it makes sense to you. If it has any link with the Russian.
Действительность is reality.
Yeah, reality.
It's more like reality.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, here it's more like action. No, here it's more like actions. Action. Дело is something you do, something you produce. So it's closer to agency. Anyway, so, but yeah, there is this problem of translation, of course. But I must say that I haven't thought philosophically in any of the Slavic languages for a long, long time. I am mostly based in my home country, but I must say that I have been heavily exposed to English and French in terms of, thinking, writing about philosophy, talking about philosophy. So I haven't even bothered enough with the question of translation. I would just say that agency would be one of the notions that I would add to the list of those terms that we could use when we talk of the self or selfhood, and not in order to demonstrate that the selfhood or the self does not have to be reduced and necessarily reducible to subject or subjectivity. The whole problem is that agency or the self has been reduced, does come down to subjectivity or the subject, whereas it's one of the ways to think of human reality. One of the ways, it is a relevant way, but it is not the only way. And I hope that through that example or that elaboration of the notion of the radical dyad, I kind of explained, and Hiron also explained a bit how one might, go beyond the confines of the logic of subject.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Subject.
Yeah, correct. Really, it is. And another question: what is design in Macedonian? Somebody can. One of our viewers.
Design is here.
How can it be translated into English? More closely.
Sein, so sein is BT. I don't BT. I don't know if it means anything to you. And das sein would be here, BT, being here, but it does not sound very tuka would be here. In Macedonian or in Serbian it would be tu. In Croatian as well, and it does not sound very elegant. To biće or tuka bitje does not sound very elegant, so we go with design. We do not translate it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fine, thank you. So another question, but maybe.
Then I have a question too, as an audience. What if I was an audience?
A good way to overcome some structure and borders. So yeah, you're free to do anything you want.
Thank you. So, Katerina, I was actually interested to make a question to you about poetry, because when I was reading your texts, your various texts and texts of Ray Brassier or I don't remember who else has written about L'Oreal extensively. I was at first I didn't understand at all what is saying there, what is exactly that giving up to the real or giving up to the universe. But yes, it was not clear. But then I reached that poetic writing by L'Oreal, which is called on Black Universe, I think. And there, when I read this, everything made immediately clear, because there he says that, yes, philosophers, they live in the world and they talk about the world, but there is always also the universe, which is not the same thing as the world. Yeah, it's true. And I know, so the poetic language is have different functions of expressing what we want to express. That's obvious. I also know that L'Oreal was fan of that circle, that poetic circle around journal Ephemer. I'm not very familiar. Yeah. There, I know. Yes, that's so. When I read that poets from that circle, I immediately saw again that poetry is completely different from philosophy. And maybe that is the key to understand L'Oreal as a thinker who is very against the philosophy, just because he sees that it is not all. It is not all, there is also poetry. I just wanted to ask you, what do you think about poetry in that regard? Do you have favorite poets? And yeah.
Okay, just tell me if I'm still there and if you can see me and hear me, because I did something here with the automaton.
Yeah, it's fine. It's all fine. So.
Oh, okay. I see L'Oreal completely different. I make completely different use of his methodology. I would see that what I get from him is mainly methodology. To me, that leads to what he actually declared to be his ambition, to the scientific posture of thought and therefore scientific treatment of philosophical material. That enables us, he enables us, and especially I think if we combine him with the means that are provided for example, structuralist linguistics, but more than that, even from Marx's own text. And if we combine this, several, three in this case, but we can add Irigare here as well and some others. If we combine all of this together in order to arrive at a certain level of formalization of our language about the human reality without reducing it to anything formal, without reifying it, and therefore without confining it within formalism, but quite to the contrary, produce this pure form, as you said, as a kind of a fiction. So scientific, the scientific approach, the scientific procedure as philo-fiction or fiction. So if we produce this scientific fiction that works well when accounting of human experiences, human reality, etc. So it's efficient, it works, but it also has an almost perfect form in this as perfect as possible formalization. I think that we're strangely approaching something that is at the same time science, so pure science, but also poesis, so something poetical as well. As for poetry, I would see it as a different mode of, intellectual production, let's cognitive labor, let's put it that way. I love and enjoyed quite a lot. Actually, when I was younger, I would enjoy more reading poetry than prose, I would say. There was an entire period which was like that, and there were poets that I enjoyed immensely. Of your poets, I enjoyed Mayakovsky a lot. We have poets. We cannot agree with the Bulgarians whose he is, whether he is Bulgarian or Macedonian. Let's call him both. Vaptsarov, who is very similar to Mayakovsky. I loved him as well, quite a lot. I enjoy a lot Greek tragedy, so the verse in Greek tragedy. So yeah, there is poetry that I love. Yeah. Who else? Blake, I guess. William Blake.
That's really interesting.
But I think that I've been far distance from poetry for a long time. Now I'm rediscovering it through my daughter, who is reading a lot of poetry and sometimes writes.
That's an intriguing package of truth, I guess, that represents the manner beyond the result, and it's the form of alternative way to not only think subjectivity as well. So the question is really, Lika's question is really related to all the stuff we're talking about, but also is a good way to react with the stuff we consider to be the basic, let's say, the basic material of senses. The just of sensing the inevitable, inevitable,
inevitable. Yeah.
So additionally, to put it briefly, I'll add that another form of intellectual labor, sort of, and the forms of reconnecting the science and the philosophy methods you've mentioned before, are considered to be enormously influenced by the very first step that we take for immersing and to thrive in the results beyond these methods. So the link between them makes them being refused, kind of. So the function we see demolishes actually the steps we can take and can take ahead, sort of. So yeah, and poetry in this point, in this stage, and this step appears as an alternative to rethink the result we can get probably through using methods. Yeah. Lika, you had something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Katerina. It's because I agree about that thing about form. That form is that which connects that pure form is something that connects L'Oreal's project and art as it is, the essence of art. Thanks Thanks for that answer.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, simultaneously. Some other questions I'll ask. There is a fundamental question. What can you? But I guess you've answered it during your speech. But you can, answer it briefly for refreshing the material for viewers. What do you see as strict philosophy and how it's related to the analytical one? You can name it, briefly, as you mentioned it.
Yeah, I would have to go soon. I wrote you in the chat room because I have immediately another thing coming up. I didn't quite hear the question.
What do you see and state as strict philosophy? Is it analytical one? Yeah.
Is strict philosophy an analytical one?
Yeah, and especially what's the bond between them, as far as I got the question.
My point was that analytic philosophy perhaps seeks to emulate, not emulate science, but by admitting certain, let's say, superiority or greater relevance or use of science vis-a-vis philosophy that kind of seeks to overcome its metaphysical limitations, but fundamentally in the last instance it never really does or never achieves to do so. And this is something that, let's say, Wittgenstein admits and therefore limits and declares the limitations of analytical philosophy. That declaration and that admission would supposedly be something that would render analytic philosophy more scientific, or that's the perception. I think that this is merely a perception and not a fact. First of all, it's not adequate. It does not correspond with the initial ambitions of analytic philosophy, which are, as I just said, this admission to these limitations and to the unsurpassable entrapment, in a way, in levels of metaphysics that would never be escaped. It kind of seeks to peel out, plug out the remaining and newly emerging levels of metaphysics, and it's still somehow there, and it's constantly in this obsessive compulsive labor of purging thought from metaphysical layers, and they're still there. So this thing allegedly renders analytic philosophy more scientific than so-called continental. I said that first of all, I do not believe in the divide. Second of all, the so-called continental tradition does include the tradition that is usually called the analytic tradition. And lastly, I said that I believe that the methods that are offered to us by Francois Laruelle and his critique of the principle of sufficient philosophy that I described at the beginning when I was talking, I tackled it when I was talking about the problem of anthropology, and also Marx's critique of subjectivity-centered thought and his proposal of an episteme of the third party's perspective would give us a more scientific stance in our treatment of the philosophical material than analytic philosophy does, or at least it gives me, in my own work, more possibilities in that sense, which does not mean that there is no inspiration, philosophical material that could be used in combination with this two authors that I mentioned, actually three, I keep mentioning Wittgenstein as well. So, for example, sometimes I resort to Sellers, some concepts in Sellers I find very useful, but I wouldn't, but I disagree that, you know, continental metaphysics bad, analytics that's scientific good. I do not kind of subscribe to this division.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So the next one, if we talk about the humanization of artificial intelligence, ideally the subject can we say something similar about domestic animals?
Well, what I said was that we cannot and should not do that. I mean, artificial intelligence should not mine, especially not the morphology of the human self or the human body, or, you know, any human morphology whatsoever.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So if we do so, that, yeah, that would continue to the would expand to the area of animals as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the next one in the chat, can you say anything about can you say anything against proteinism, which denies consciousness pro phenomena non-protein substantum? Would you call it protein chauvinism, like mainstream philosophy of mind?
Now I I know that there was something about Prometheanism, but there were breaks. Can you when I couldn't hear you quite well, can you repeat it?
Yeah, sure. So can you say anything against proteinism, which denies consciousness phenomenon on non-protein substratum? Would you call it protein chauvinism, like mainstream philosophy of mind?
Well, to me, Promethean philosophy is again.
No, it's not. Sorry, I don't think it's a serious question. It's more of a joke, I think, because it's not Prometheanism. It's not. It's not Ray Brassier and so on. Yeah, it is Protein.
Okay, but guys, I must go. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah, sure. So, okay, so.
Maybe there will be one last question.
Yeah.
Just.
Yeah, I'm searching for the best one, and sort of. You can answer to this one briefly if you want, while I'm searching for it, for the best one. So, dear viewers, you can repeat your last question and I'll choose from them. There is an objection.
I'm already. Let's get another one, because I counted that on the fact that we would end by 8, so I really have to go. So let's just take one last question and
I got
go.
it.
But you guys can continue. Yeah, I'm guessing.
Well,
There is,
I found the question. I was just searching for it in the chat. It's not that easy sometimes. Good evening. How do you think, what's relation between concept of gender in gender studies and Lacanian concept of discourse sexuation is? Yeah.
It's a long one. Well, the concept of gender has its own genealogy that we can link with, you know, not only Judith Butler's, but she is the most iconic representative and perhaps the most influential one. Judith Butler's reading of Lacan, of structuralism, that was in America called post-structuralism for some reason, Foucault as well. So this combination of Foucault, Lacan, and this amalgam that was named, put under this rubric of post-structuralism in the Anglo-Saxon theoretical tradition, or in the tradition of critical theory, for example, has its own genealogy. And it's this one, it's the constructivist argument that we have been kind of refuting since the very beginning of this conversation, since 2 hours ago. So it's simply there is one genealogy, one history. I would put it, I would say it's simply a different paradigm in Kuhn's sense of the word, from the Lacanian consideration of gender. Well, he does not operate with the notion, by the way, of gender. He does operate with femininity and masculinity, but not with the concept of gender. What is worthwhile pointing out is that, interestingly, even though post-structuralism and constructivism lays claim on Lacanian tradition and calls it a part, an inevitable element, an inalienable element of post-structuralism, actually is the constructivist thesis, which is the fundament of the notion of gender, is quite different from Lacan's concept of sexuation.
Okay. I guess we can end here. And about the previous question, it was the serious one about chauvinism, Lika, and the person is being angry because of you interrupted him. So, what do you think?
Yeah, he can be angry at me.
Yes. There is such thing as Promethean chauvinism. That's what I think.
Okay. Got you. So, like a central point of subjectivity as well. Yeah, so it could be, they can be related, the things. So, I guess here we can end our discussion. Really, I want to, immensely thank you, Katerina, and you, Lika, for being here, for being so fulfilled in your approaches, in your words, in your speeches, in a more widespread meaning, in a meaning that speech is more than just a speech. So thank you. It was a pleasure. I hope we'll reconnect in other contexts. It would be a pleasure too, also.
Thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure. Really, I quite enjoyed it. I'm so sorry that I'm really on the clock, but there is a person that is already angry that I'm late, so I really must go. but it was truly a pleasure, and I hope we'll repeat it again.
Yeah.
I mean, we come up with another. Yeah.
So
would be great.
Thank you very much.
True pleasure. Great.
Great.
Thanks.
So,
Bye.
Bye. Good luck.
Bye.
So I guess we can talk about it a bit in English as well, maybe, for continuing the vibe. As I've got it, I was too sweaty for ignoring the way that I've overcome it. I sort of coped with the stress I was facing before the action, before the event, during several days before, like, oh, what should I do? So what do you think? Yeah.
So I had weird feelings too, because of my resentment or anger position about feminist subjectivity, which I just don't want to talk about it on everyday level, I think, but it was cool that we arrived at the topic anyway. Yeah, it's important.
Yeah, I guess it was great. And if we try to elaborate on it in further discussions and this extra mile we are overcoming right now, we can state that subjectivity is a phenomenon that constructs the I'd say the inevitable itself, and therefore it not should be demolished, but should be
What is inevitable in Russian?
непреодолимый, or something like that, as far as I know, как такой неизбежный, that sort of неизбежный. So to continue, we should not demolish the subjectivity, but reform its status beyond ourselves. So we should extract it from the self, in case we want to construct and create the perspective of being, as the perspective of being isn't fulfilled enough, isn't even focused. What do you think?
The constructive of being, I didn't hear the last part. I heard everything, but didn't hear the last part of the question.
What exactly? It's hard to repeat myself, you know that.
I agree that subjectivity is not something which should be abolished. Or overcome, as was in one of the questions. That's why my answer about models is a joke, but there is some grain of true in the joke, of trueness, because yes, Katerina mocked those thinking through models a bit, and I think that we can use that attitude towards models as some sort of joke things to answer such straightforward questions. Yes, like overcoming of the human or subjectivity and so on. Yeah, so it was actually true. It was actually right that in one of our names of the event, there was several names for the event, and one of them was like that, post-structuralism. So that we will talk about post-structuralism, and as an obstacle, but as the obstacle which could be solved through the means of post-structuralism too. It is about subjectivity the same thing, that the subjectivity is an obstacle, but the problem of subjectivity can be solved within the same apparatus which made it evident or made it existent.
Okay. I do not know if I was clear enough, and I suppose I wasn't. It would be easier to suppose I wasn't, but at least I tried. I've tried, yeah. And to make myself clear, in at least at this point, when we are being in a more intimate, let's say, situation for reconnection, I'd say that it's not only about demolishing and rewriting, restating, and so on and so forth. It's also about the descendants of subjectivity that is left for us when we do demolish it, actually. So we reinforce ourselves towards another material when we overcome something given, and therefore we create something that can be linked or related to at least have some bond, with this relation. Tautology, but still it's fine. With this relation, and the very core of it, we face the further perspective of reality as a totally reformed material, and this status reformed material can be the way, can be resource for living, for forming and producing the existence. That's the creation, that's the grammar, that's not the grammar, but the procedures we do oh my God, I'm being, too, let's say, not nervous, but I'm into high spirits for hiding it. Like, do you think killing those guys is funny? Yeah, and I'm trying to pretend it's not the same, but
Yeah.
So what do you think, colleague?
Yes, I think it is a central insight of my thoughts too, of my thoughts of the last year or several months, that it is interesting to think about ontology not as a thing that comes down from some kind of transcendence, but as a structure which builds something using the blocks which were already here. Yeah, and it can be initiated. That ontology can be initiated in different fields, of course. But when I thought about this, there was a very important distinction between between merely thinking about immanence as that all forgiving and no boundaries at all initial structure that doesn't relate to the real in any way and doesn't answer to any calls of outside matter. Yes, that would be immanence that is understood in that way would be super artificial, too artificial for me. So yes, there should be. It is cool to think about building something using the blocks which were already here, but there should also exist some list of limitations. Maybe it would concern the organization of blocks, maybe the ingredients or recipes for their organization. Something should restrict the building methods. So that's a subtle distinction. I didn't pursue further for now.
Well, I'll answer to the chat, but verbally, as we have some opportunity for being more, expanded in our own approaches. Therefore, let's solve all the problems of the philosophy just right now, as we're in a concentrated module. We're being a module, not a separated humans, and this focused phenomenon of ours can see this to be a result without some hidden consequence. Therefore, we can produce hidden consequence by ourselves. I mean, so it's not about an idea. The perfection of the usage, that's outside. It's something too formed for being noticed, and therefore losing the actual material we're operating with. So back to the topic you've mentioned. That's not only about postulating something, but also about renewing the substance, as far as I got. Am I right? Like, we renew the substance we're working with, therefore we being in a toy philosophy mood, sort of, like we do subjectivity, well, in case we neglect it as something that is given but not brought from something. Yeah, so that's a question about possession, the possession of the world given for us, that's presented in a structure of subjectivity as a myth. Actually, myth. Yeah, hate these combinations. They suck. I think. Yeah.
I was actually surprised about that you had a background in analytic philosophy. It was an interesting and a pleasant fact.
You know, I'm working on Nelson's Goodman now. It's irrationalism and metaphysics in his work on building the worlds, but in English it sounds...
Yeah, world making. Yes, I do that too, and I give lectures on it.
Oh man, we can do another stream on it. Sounds good, really.
Yeah, it's just the same trajectory from Sellers and basically from Carnap to Sellers or to Goodman. There is this way of...
Synth moment and fan clap, like all alternative analytics. Yeah, but it's not a bad thing, it's actually producing. So yeah, sorry for interrupting you, continue.
I just remembered where that intuition about building not from scratch but from something that is already here, where it is very clear, and where is a clear example of it. It is in the same linguistic and analytic philosophical approach, where the philosophy is trying not to create some sort of, for example, not to create what is woman when it is talking about that subject, but
there is no woman actually. What are you talking about? Yeah, continue.
It is, it is the other trajectory. But the analysis of language can be made through just looking at the list of speeches where that thing was emerging. Yeah, where that word woman was emerging, and in what sense it was used in the language, in the sentences. Yeah, it's quite an empirical way, of course, to deal with things, and it doesn't create anything more than there is in the language. It just sort of observes what there is in empirical usage of language, and I know that this description is very bold, and that it surely there is surely something which it misses. But I don't know yet what exactly it misses. Maybe you know.
Okay, so yeah, I guess I should try to elaborate on it for managing overall, curiosity. We are breeding now for certain discoveries we face currently. So mainly, maybe the reason is isn't really ours. I mean, if we talk on that in terms of absence and something being essential, actually, and something that produces itself as an objective or something in an objective status, for showing up. Maybe it really doesn't exist for ourselves till we refresh its status, not in front of us, but in front of a, let's say, texture, like texture, that can be found in an inner sort of absolutic meaning, the way we perceive the absolute. or I'll put it again, the last phrase, it was too vague for being understood even by myself, so I'll try to refresh it again, restate it. I say we are, oh, Lika is going, that's the best part of every stream we do, like, you know, the direct movement you produce. So, and basically, we are being in a mood when we are, when we can get attached to anything happening with ourselves, and in the, you know, controversial criteria, in controversial criteria we're interacting with, and I'll end up here, in case we perform the inner meaning as an absolute for ourselves. So the link makes possible, the operation of linking actually, makes it possible to operate with objects. And the for object is a certain, is another slight exaggeration of reality. And it's opposite to reality, opposite to the essence itself. And it really strikes me. And I'm feeling, you know, that in this case, every time I think we are making a headway, we take a step back in our studies, in our action, in our acting towards different points, as we try to make it a coherent completeness, but it is not, as it's not something we make, we are this coherence, and therefore we can make. Yeah, sort of like that. What do you think? And then we can
Yes.
additional questions and chat.
Yes, it depends on what is our subject, of course, because it is a cool way to make some kind of empirical analysis and to use the words which have a reputation that they were understood by everyone during many times in the past. It is very cool when we are trying to elaborate on, for example, on color of things. As Nelson Goodman says that it is that if we are trying to say what emerald color is, we can say that it's blue, we can say that it's green, depending on what color it was in the past, what color were all emeralds that we saw in the past. But we can also make up another color, make a fictional color, which is a mixture of blue and green, which would be bleen, which would be bleen, or grew or bleen. Yeah, he says that logically speaking, those colors would be true true to use in logical sense, but if we'll say to another person that the object is bleen, there is a very little chance that the other person would understand us. So there we look at previous ways of naming color. Yes, it is. Yes, but it is like one of the layers of the language, which really doesn't say anything about existential one, about our presence and about subjectivity. It's something completely different, because when we are talking about subjectivity, we really do not deal with something that was explicitly present in the past, and we are not dealing with something which everyone in any community could agree on, because subjectivity is something that that is not stable. Yes, that just really goes through the process of transformation, which is continuous transformation. Yes, and there you are right. I think that in that regard we should remake our notion of essence.
Yeah, exactly. And we need passionate union of the opposites for reaching the result. I guess the results of being in the contrary to a certain model of let's say the necessity to join certain form of being as the subjectivity is. So you should have subjectivity that is given, as everybody's different. What the hell are you talking about? Really, it's not that. But it can be this. But that's the way you should,
This is the way.
Yeah. If you say this, you have your way. You know where you should go. Actually, yeah. So that's the distance you should. I'd say, yeah. I'd put it a bit rude, but it would be more direct. You should recover the distance. Recover its main points, its own features that that allows it to be presented not in front of us, but besides there are no us. That's crucial, I guess. Really, it's of paramount importance. We really face encounter the ability of expressing the meaning when we are aside from it, and that proves the world existing. I'd say every time as it's the first time, on a daily basis of our interaction beyond ourselves. So that's tiny ontology that makes sense, that constructs the I'd say to save me from any further embarrassment, I'd say it constructs alternatives as a procedure itself. So maybe that's an ontological models, yeah, that they are here again. The models that are present because of we allow them to be present, and this allowance we are in this allowance maybe, I don't know. Well, this agreement we postulate actually suffers from the old ontology that need to serve certain problematic from the outside. Like there was a question about pragmatism. Well, there are certain points of interest in this, and they are really gripping, like interest in pragmatism, like it is a link between the ways we create and the radicalism and in stating that makes us to take a stance of behaving beyond results also as well. But it, I'd say, lessen the amount of consequences we do not produce but we can be in. So what do you think? That's the sort of an answer on pragmatism, and then after your answer, your monologue, the further monologue you'll produce, we can answer on chauvinism and I guess the protein. It's really important in our studies of subjectivity as well, I guess.
I've recently on Sunday, I think, Sunday, yes. On Sunday, I made a lecture on Nelson Goodman and on his pragmatism attitude towards color, and it was talking about yes, that green and green and so on, that first we start with our experience, some kind of immediate experience, but when we do the analysis of that experience, we actually see that it is not a mean of some kind of immediate sensing, but it's a mean of language practice, language using. And if we arrived at that point, we actually arrived at the point of some kind of conceptual freedom, because we no longer need to compare the green, that thing which we call green, and some kind of true green. Yeah, that is the exciting part. I think that that pragmatism allows us not to relate to essence, but it is so. It just was a lecture which was made to elaborate somehow on the color. Yeah, it's not like say about different methods of saying about color. There was and there was different approaches too. But relating to that method which you were talking about, you talked that subjectivity is not something which should be overcome, and maybe there is the same thing, that the essence is not something which should be overcome, and or which should be always put as in the not second but the least position, as unnecessary or unreal. Maybe there is still some kind of way to talk about essence, but I don't know. But if what I'm trying to say is that yes, maybe models have their недостатки. Let's answer the other questions right now. I'm in the process of eating.
Okay. Like I'm processing the food. I'm processing the very the matter of consuming. Like the function is being forbidden from the material, but by expressing it, we express the overall situation besides the context of an outside modality reform. So it's good to mention, actually. And также приятного аппетита, собственно.
Спасибо.
Yeah. So. Yeah. About chauvinism, actually, proteinism. Just one moment. Well, I'll answer it out loud then. Thomas, I guess I don't know what exactly you're talking about. I mean, what's whom you're mentioning, but the stuff mentioned by by my colleagues and by my mouth too. Let's say, and that came through my mouth too, was elaborating on different perception of the stability we can form. Well, on my stream I can talk on it even more extensively if you wish. Anyway, I feel strong intention to argue with you as you have, in case you state that you haven't listened and heard anything special, but all of that was special. Actually, it's not a theory of a narrative. That's a theory of how stability forms the interactions within the result. How is that the same? There are only differentiations in it. So I strongly disagree with something you said. Yeah, I guess you've gotten the difference at least now. So back to yeah, that's a problem of verification, and as well the problem of acting with from no point, I'd say. So it's not only the process we produce and name something, X actually. That's the result that is already given, and therefore we form the distance for making ourselves the selves actually. We're making ourselves separated from something we can call outside. So yeah, chauvinism. Lika, do you have some opinion on this? Like proteinism, chauvinism. It's against transhumanity and so on. Yeah.
It's about what? The last
chauvinism. Yeah.
that I heard, and the last word by you. It's about. Okay, never mind. I just wanted to show the picture. I'm trying to get to the chat too from my phone.
Yeah.
There is a funny moment that it shows me, what should I watch? Contrcultural philosophy or a kitten? This is the way, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one, yeah.
That's why.
Yeah. Okay, Thomas, I got it. Sorry for being distracted from actual meaning. It happens with me, and especially in this case, in being over-focused in certain, in certain directions. So sorry. Anything. It's interesting to
about proteinism. There are different words which look very same. Prometheanism and proteinism. That what was I saying? That Prometheanism is a very unsound thing in those circles which Katerina come from or just deals with. Promethean perspective is neo-rational perspective, which she neo-rationalism she does not like very much, like those thinkers like Peter Wolfendale or Ray Brassier's perspective, abandoning L'Oreal, as she said. Yeah, so Prometheanism is something about that initial fire technology as a initial fire that was distinctively given to the human as the human. The other animals they were given some characteristics like force or beauty, and the Prometheus he gave the fire.
Prometheus, sort of like that.
Yes. So Prometheanism deals with technological self of the human, and some kind of using rational apparatus for our own sake. Maybe I don't remember exactly what is description, but it should be something like that. So she said that Prometheanism, that kind of thing, is quite chauvinist. Yes, Helen Hester, I think, says about it the same thing.
Okay. It's interesting how we redefine mind by choosing the exact feature we would fight with. Like we're choosing to cope with something for leaving us enough room for further interactions beyond, let's say, these essentialized standards that are given not from outside, that outbursts actually from a certain conceptualization of a starting point. Before we really should reform the starting point of ourselves and the starting point and its basic form in an overall context of a theoretical movement, I don't know, sort of this thing. Let's, I guess, stating briefly the problem that was actually the main here, as our dear viewer Thomas says that he still doesn't get the problem, the main points of our sufferings.
Of what? Of the event? Of the whole event?
Yeah, what's the main question? I've tried to state it, but maybe...
His question is what he is watching right now.
Us? I don't know.
He is asking us what he is watching. I mean, to ask what is the event about is equate
from the start. So I'll read the comment. I still don't get the problem. If it was about the self, so it's social linguistics, but useful construct. Yeah, so that's a useful construct. So why should we bother? That's the question of him. Yeah. My way to answer it is that the usefulness do not fulfill our own desires, actually. So we construct something and therefore neglect the desires we still have. We still have in stating our own existence and restating it. I guess I'm pretty clear now. What do you think?
Yes, it is when I was trying to describe, to say about that empirical way of understanding things. Yes, I saw too that it is quite narrow in some sense, in some cases, because because it truly rests on the past ways of presentance of objects in question. But what if we are dealing with something which is emerging right now, or if we are dealing with something that will arrive later? Yes, so Or what if we are dealing with something which wasn't, which can't be translated into some symbolic signs, which language consists of, or which can't be translated into notions, and so on. Yes, there are many parts or fields of existence which do not translate into the material which could be theoretically used, empirically, analytically, and so on. So yes, that is the thing in question here. So if we are answering from not as intellectual but packages, but as personals, what does that as persons? What does that question do with us exactly? So I'll give an answer from me, from exactly me. Me personally. I have just remembered. Yes, exactly for me, it is a big problem that on the one side I very much into analytic ways of describing the world and the functioning language and functioning approach to see the human as an agent of intelligence. It is very desirable way to think for me, but at the same time I see that yes, it is of course not all, and that the real, as Katerina says, the real, or some kind of pure form, or unavailable, untranslatable into notions thing, that it exists too. It too has a presence, and it would be great to somehow find a passage in between those two tendencies.
Additionally, I'll also mention that, well, the subjectivity does not fit our desires as creatures that are being in a constant way of producing and reproducing themselves on additional levels, in additional layers, not on but in also. I mean that's the thing is that we're influenced by the overall tendencies we're being in, like the concept of a world that really do exist, and it's not a consideration we confront with. We also accept it, and therefore we are talking here, about all the stuff, and especially empiricism. How is it to say? How can I put it correctly in English? Maybe empiricism.
Empiricism. Sellers has empiricism.
Empiricism. So
and Lenin.
Yeah. So,
Lenin in English.
Yeah. So it would be. Well, let's put it this way and leave it this way exactly. So being in a certain let's say being and living Господи, it's too hard to pronounce it. My tongue is being tantalized by being ruined. Yeah. And sort of by the fact that we are being living inevitably Unrealities, yeah, sort of. So we are the unevitable. Yeah. It would easy to say it this way. In case of accepting this, this one, do not be skeptical. That's fine. You should be,
It doesn't matter really if we can say green, and if everyone agrees thinks about green, it should be fine. So unevitable.
Yeah, unreachable. In some cases. So I'll try to continue this models for its managing and managing the concepts beyond it. So if we are the unevitable, I'd say unevitable, we are possessed and even thrived to stuck in this vision of the cohesion, and the illusion of the world that is united. And this illusion of being united makes us suck, maybe, or just confront the very basic way to stick to our personalized points, or personalized points that are hidden in ourselves, that are inner points exactly and precisely. So therefore we have a risk to lose the connection with the desires that we do not represent directly, but we feel and we are producing just by being in a concentrated modality of a world presentation. Yeah, I guess I'm done here. What do you think? Your last word would be refreshing.
Okay, it was just very interesting to hear your thoughts, because it was very intriguing to know what you exactly understand by presence, or some way of making a subject present here. Because I didn't really know, is it connected to desires, or is it connected to inner states, and in what relation, in existential relation, or some other, like analytic relation. Analytic philosophy deals with inner states too. In a way, it says that they are just unreachable. That's their way of dealing, but okay.
Yes. Inevitability. Yeah. Inevitability. That is Thomas. Oh my God.
Yes. It was interesting. I think we should discuss later that question of desires, because yes, it is a big one, and we can have different methods of talking about them.
Yeah, I guess we should stop here and leave some issues to the further interactions. So, thank you very much for being with me, for organizing this event. So, cyberfeminism is the best, as Lika Kareva is, as well as Lika Kareva, actually. If you haven't noticed yet, it actually is the truth. So, well, my computer is, stuck in loading the visual material, so I'm not allowed to move here, and I'm waiting for a certain moment of it. Anyway, really thank you very much for you being you, I'd say. Yeah, I put really a lot of warm feelings and senses beyond feelings as a concrete subjectivity, I don't know, as a concrete matter in this, so... Мое почтение!
That could not be translatable.
Yeah, it is.
Into the fucking English language.
Yeah, it is. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes, it